Hi. Much. It seems like it's been 2 months. All right, I want to get started. We have people continuing to sign on. We've got about probably half the people that will ultimately be on. Anyhow, let me go down the list. Dr. Andriek, Belma Andriek, Healthcare District. Belma, are you on, or is Dr. Courtney Phillips or Darcy Davis on? Not yet. Okay. All right. I expect they will be on soon. Tom Baird, Jones and Foster. Tom, you with us? Yeah, I think he'll be a little late as well. Turner Benoit, Hanley. Turner. Okay, I'm 0 for 3. I'm in a slump here. Anybody from SFBEN, South Florida Behavioral Health Network?
Hey, Al,
Ann,
it's
you on?
Ann
Ann, there you are.
Ann and Matt Kalowski. Thanks.
Welcome. Ariana Ciancio, I saw you you come on. Hi, Ariana. Okay, let's see, Uta from Gaziak from Florida Behavioral Health Association is not going to be with us. I saw Michael McKee. Are you on with us, Michael? There you are.
No,
And I don't think Lori's with us, right?
she's not.
Okay. All right, you will represent, sir. John Hewlick, Palm Beach County. John.
Here.
Hi, John. Long time no see. Okay, who do we have here from FAR? I think I saw Micah.
Al, I'm here and Heidi's here.
Heidi, okay, great. Michael Cabot coming on?
So we also have Susan Ramsey and I don't know if Michael's joining. Susan, do you know if Michael's joining?
Yes, Michael's here. Michael Slossman's here.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, and that sounded like Susan Ramsey. Susan, you here?
I am here. Yes, sir.
Okay, you're here separately as an attorney.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm also here with Bar.
Okay, good. Okay, let's see, who's here from DCF? Beg your pardon?
So my name is Sarah Shepard. I am with DCF CMH, but I am not sure how I got the invite. So I'm kind of new to the group. So not really sure. I'm just listening in today.
You're doing fine. Don't worry about it. I got it. Ms. McKinstry told me about what y'all are doing in Tallahassee to try to get families back together. And so she probably won't be tuning in until later in the meeting, but thank you and good to meet you. Jeff Lynn is not going to be with us today. He has a conflict. Nancy McConnell from Rebel Recovery. Nancy? Okay. Neil McGarry, FCB, Florida Certification Board. Neil? Okay. I see Dr. Moran, Robert Moran, Medical Director, Family Center for Recovery. Doctor?
Yep, here.
Good to see you. Dr. Rachel Needle, I believe I saw you. Yeah, you are. Hi, Dr. Needle.
Hi.
Houston Park, Florida Department of Health. Would you reach out to Houston and make sure he's the one representing from DOH? Because it's been 2 or 3 meetings. Okay, Terrell Pyburn, Coconut Creek, City Attorney. Hi, Terrell.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon. Nikki Soda, I saw you're on. You got a couple of presentations today.
You.
Congratulations on the new gig, which I'm sure you'll let everybody know about. Dr. Simonides, John, are you here? Oh, okay. Hopefully he'll be tuning in. Alton Taylor from Drug Abuse Foundation. Alton, are you with us?
Stephanie from Drug Abuse Foundation here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Stephanie. Jan Toman, Project Opioid, South Florida. Jan. Okay. Dr. Vinicor, Lori, I saw you up on the left-hand side of the screen. Hi.
Nice to see you.
Commissioner Weiss, Greg Weiss from Palm Beach County Commission. Is Nils here? Would you reach out to their office and see if they're coming? Richard Worms from Attorney General's office.
I'm here.
Hey, Richard.
How are you, sir? Just an
good,
FYI,
I'm
I
good.
will have to drop off a little early today.
Yeah, you guys got slammed, I heard, when I was talking to some of the folks from DCF. Hope you're okay. I mean, you are.
I'm fine. I'm not. Are you referring to storm damage or?
Storm.
Yeah, no. Here in Tampa, we got hit pretty good this morning, but it wasn't too bad. For
Okay.
everybody's enjoyment, I came the closest I've ever come to being electrocuted today, or struck by lightning. I've been electrocuted as doing work in the Navy, but I'm still here. But struck by lightning, parked the car just before I got out, right next to the parking garage, just out like where I parked near the edge of the concrete, so you can see out. A lightning bolt hit. It was like a bomb going off. I've heard bombs go off in my career as well, and that was like a wow moment. It was very cool, act of nature, but it was one of those wake up moments like, okay, be on your toes today. So yeah, be careful out there.
Oh, okay. Word to the wise. So I'm glad to see you're all right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I never had that happen. Hope not to, but
It was interesting to say the least, but thanks for letting me share that. Again, I apologize. I'll have to drop off maybe 45 minutes early today, and then I'll hopefully be raring to go for the next one full
okay,
session.
we may even be done by when you have to drop off.
Oh, that's
I
outstanding.
think it's going to be a little quicker than normal. Eric Urlano, Integrity Billing. Eric, are you with us? Okay, I believe some people will be joining us, but let's get started. Let's go to the stats. I'll give you an update. I mean, I don't know if you can ever consider any of this good news in terms of because one death is a tragedy. And 406 is a statistic, but we haven't seen numbers, opioid overdose deaths. We haven't seen numbers this low since 2018. And that was after the worst year we'd ever had. But if you look on your screen, we are this is the total, no pending cases. Of course, there's always one or two that when the Florida Department of Law Enforcement gets hold of it, there might be an increase or decrease by one or two, but we were at 406 in 2023. 2022, we were 431. Consistent with the total number of overdoses, drug overdoses, we're at about 76 to 78% of the total are opioid. Fentanyl, of course, remains the killer. It's 92%, this year, 2023, 93% last year in 22, well, the year before. Xylazine, pretty consistent, 22 to 23. NPE is 0, down from 20. And fentanyl has reduced from 22 at 100 to 23 at 65. So that's good news there, especially with the xylazine having been reduced, because we are seeing combination of fentanyl xylazine. The decline in 22 over 21 was 17% in Palm Beach County. The year before, 21 over 2020 was 14%. So we're still on a roll. We're 6% down this year from last year. This year, again, meaning 2023, where we have the total numbers. We will not see the Florida Department of Law Enforcement numbers for 2023 until at least November, December. So we'll keep you posted on that. Okay, with regard to Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, which is the next page. We're actually at our lowest rate since 2017, when we were at our highest in terms of overdose transport. Lots of reasons for this, as you all know, including the availability of Narcan, This trend is good. We're 57% gross, 57% reduction in the last 8 years. And we're down again to the lowest level we have been since the numbers were being reported in this realm. The suspected drug overdose records were being kept starting 2017. Wanted to make mention of one other thing. There's an article that you received in your attachments. I thought this was, well, this is horrible, but it's good information. That according to NIDA, SAMHSA, and the CDC, which did a joint study, where they examined 649,000 plus adults aged 18 to 64 who died of an overdose between 2011 and 2021. And they determined that almost 50% were parents, which means that 321,000 plus children lost a parent to drug overdose between those 10 years. It's tragic, but it also needs to be part of the dialogue, because we face a collateral issue of children who have lost parents to overdose that we need to deal with. And so I wanted everybody to know about that, if you didn't already. With that, one other, this is not on the agenda, but apparently on Monday or Tuesday, it was Monday, the governor signed into law House Bill 1065. So it is now going to be effective July 1st. While there is a delay, I believe until January 26th, Matt is required, if it's prescribed by a qualified physician or physician's assistant. Also, we now have a new definition for recovery residents, which includes the various levels. We are probably the first, not probably, we're the first in the country to actually codify in statute the NAR. Basically, it's not, we have a little bit of a hybrid here in Palm Beach County, which Micah can talk about if he chooses. But for the first time in this country, we now have 4 levels of certified recovery residences. And we also have a community, the definition of community residences, which is hopefully going to pave the way to us expanding in zoning and also in being able to identify community housing, being able to identify those level 3s and 4s, which are so tied to services. Anyhow, Niels, I see you've checked in. Thanks for coming. Okay, is there any question about the stats or the statute that was signed into law? I see a hand, Austin. No, I don't see a hand. That's my cursor. Okay. No hands. Okay, let's move on to the FAR update. Micah, Heidi, who wants to speak? And we'll put this on the screen, please.
Just making sure Heidi's gonna do her own.
There you go. You got that one?
Okay, I'll do it.
I'm here, Al. I'll go over that as soon as it pops up. There we go.
Can everybody hear Micah? You're a little bit tinny, so speak into the lapel, please.
Let me speak into my lav mic here a little bit. All right, you guys should you could see we're I won't go through the whole state. I want to focus mostly on Palm Beach County. Just know that if we could tab up a little bit here, if you can see here down in Palm Beach County, the majority of recovery housing, of course, is here in Palm Beach County, with just under 3,600 beds of certified recovery housing. Now, mind you, that's all levels of care, which are, all housing levels. So that's primarily for FAR would be level 2, level 3, and level 4, with the bulk being in level 4 and level 2. We have a slight increase statewide. We're up about 8 beds total over the state from last month, which is good. We want to keep increasing capacity. If we could go to the next slide, please. Next table. There we go. We go up. There we are. You can see this is the aggregate throughout the for the past years, and you can certainly see when we started this process back in 2017, just over 3,000 beds, and here we are now, May and April of 2024, just over 9,300 beds in the state of Florida. So we continue to increase capacity, continue to bring on new partners and get folks certified. That being said, from our partners across the state, we know that there are a number, not only across the state, but here in Palm Beach County, lots of uncertified houses right now, and we are working diligently to change those hearts and minds and make sure we're bringing people into this compliance. All right, I keep trying to swipe this thing up, and it's not me. And so that number in Palm Beach County represents over 40% of the housing, the certified recovery housing in the state of Florida. So we are this is the recovery centric capital of Florida, to say the least. All right, keep on trucking up here. And here, now you can see the Palm Beach County numbers for our providers. Obviously, the bulk of providers are in level 2 and level 4. We do have a few level 1 providers and 3s. What we're seeing now is a lot of level 1s converting up to level 2 and level 3 converting up to level 4. So we'll see that trend probably continue as we add on further partners. And I want to quickly go over the overdose. Again, seeing this trend coming down in Palm Beach County. If you look in West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County for this past month, we had no resident deaths. We had 2 overdoses, however, no deaths. And, obviously any overdose is one too many, but either the quick response and certainly the use of naloxone is a game changer in this. If we look down, but to our south, just south of the border, and we're looking into Broward County, we had 9 overdoses and 4 deaths in housing. So we're taking a look at that. We're looking exactly some of these issues around that. Obviously, the epidemiology around it, anything within the housing itself. So these are all things that we continually monitor. We continually work out with our compliance committee, and again, working to create the safest environment for housing that we can. But certainly here in Palm Beach County, to see that we've had 2 overdoses but no deaths this month. Anytime we go another month without losing someone we care about is very, very important. So that is we could go up. I believe that's our FAR report for this month. And if we look here, sorry, we have some drug choice preference here. Obviously, opiates, synthetics, when we say fentanyl, and our age groups, right now, primarily that 20s and 30s is still the bulk. And opiates is certainly still the primary cause. As we continue to look here, no issues in level 1, level 3, again, our smallest, level 2 and level 4 are our largest capacity, and that's where we see the most usage. All right. And obviously here's our FAR keys. If you go visit the website right now, you will see these things. We had another great meeting today with our development team, and our new digital footprint is moving quickly to its completion, and we look forward to sharing that with the group at the most likely the next meeting. Any questions at all, feel free to reach out to our FAR team, and any of us is ready and willing to speak with any partners out there, not only about any information you may need, but also if you have information regarding any certified house, uncertified house, or information you want to bring to us, please. We're as good as the information we're given. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Micah. Couple of questions and observations. Well, number one, Micah, you're new to task force, for FAR, while we are in Palm Beach County, we are basically a statewide, task force in terms of, we look to the entire state. But, you know, we got a good grip on Palm Beach County. We are, central. We are obviously the treatment capital of Florida. Broward County, let's not discount them because
Not at all.
31% of
Yes.
the programs and 29% of the beds. But two things. Number one, when we look down to the individual counties, one thing that concerns me, and maybe you can address this and maybe you don't know, and we'll be looking into this a little bit, but
Sure.
right below Palm Beach County, we have Pasco Pinellas.
Yes.
Pasco Pinellas in 2022, statewide numbers, had 720 opioid overdose deaths, the most in the state by far.
Yes.
And I see that, keep going up, up to the counties. I keep going. Here we go,
There we
right
are.
there. Okay, if you notice, we have a total of 470 or so beds in all of Pasco Pinellas County that are certified.
That's right.
There must be, because the demand is so high, and I can check this and maybe work with our partners over at the DCF to find out how many component licenses, outpatient component licenses there are. I think that's an underserved region. I also want to look at Orange County, which has 1178, but my understanding is Orange County has a very vibrant treatment community there. So we have to start looking around the state to see, number one, who's flying under the radar and maybe referring or accepting referrals from non-certified recovery residences.
So
That's a crime.
Yeah. And I can speak to some of that right now because we're working very closely, especially in the last several months, with DCF. We're part of their regional team meetings now, and we're looking exactly at that issue. We have whole areas of the state that are grossly underserved with certified recovery housing and other services as well. When you talk about Pasco Pinellas, then you're going north and northwest of Tampa. Large area of need. And from what we understand from some of our certified partners there as well, that there are a tremendous amount of uncertified houses right now. And that stretches up and down the Gulf Coast, quite frankly. We're also seeing a big issue up in the Panhandle. You mentioned it very well. Orange County is fairly robust. And a lot of providers there, and they have a very strong recovery-oriented community. Our friends on the Space Coast are actually experiencing some of this as well. I would say the number of certified is growing, and identifying those that are not is high priority right now. And then again, our friends in the northeast part of the state, up in Jacksonville, they have a very good connected network of providers up there, FAR certified, and also they work with us, and they work through collectively to bring new providers in and get them into FAR certification as quickly as possible. So we're looking at this across the state. We're working directly with DCF. We're also working with the best information we can from our providers to identify and bring people into the fold. Our goal is to get people certified and up into compliance, so we have that capacity. I mean, it sounds like a whole lot at 9,306 beds, but at the end of the day, we know that there are huge areas that are underserved around the state. Now, I do know our partners over at Oxford House, they keep increasing in number as well. But look, you put those two things together, there is still massive areas of the state. So we are addressing this. We've pulled all those licenses. We have a spreadsheet where licenses are, where housing is, where housing isn't. DCF has done a good job of starting to really issue those fines. They're putting some teeth into it, and people need to realize too, and this is for anybody that talks to operators, that these are not $1,000 per site fines. They are per occurrence fines. So we've had providers getting $20,000 fines for 20 referrals that were made to non-certified houses. So, you know, we'll all together, we'll be the eyes, they'll be the teeth, and we'll start getting this thing growing here.
Well, that's great news. Thank you, Micah, for that. I also wanted to commend FAR. And well, first let me ask, do you have a fail-safe to make sure you get an accurate count on the overdoses from certified recovery residences?
How so, Al?
Well, you know, I believe reporting is mandatory.
Yes, that's correct.
As far as their certification requires reporting.
Yes.
Are you comfortable that that you're getting the report for these overdoses accurately?
I am. We actually do. Our constituents have done a real good job of you know, with a mandated reporting component, and of course we have a full follow-up to each of those incidents. And I would say that that communication has improved dramatically over the last several months, and certainly in the last year. Folks, first of all, people feel, for whatever reason, that comfortability, because they know there's going to be support there. And so I feel very confident in those numbers. Now, things that happen outside of housing, we can't answer that. Unfortunately, sometimes things will happen outside of housing, but you know, without that information, we're only as good as we get inside. But our providers done very, very well as of reporting incidents. And again, that follow up from our staff to the providers I think has really improved that process. And also, we made it policy that incident reports are filed within 24 hours.
Well, Micah, I just want to commend FAR. 46 overdoses in a 4-month period. The first 4 months of this year, when you have 9,300 beds, I mean, one overdose is too many, but that's phenomenal. Because when you think about it, most people are at risk that are living in certified housing. You know, maybe not so much in level 1s and Oxford houses, but clearly in the 2, 3, and 4 levels. It's amazing, and it speaks very well to your certification program that there are so few with so many beds, almost 10,000 beds.
It's appreciated, and I think the increase in communication, education, and you know, again, the more involved our programs are, the better our programs get. And we're seeing that increased level of participation. And that's both ways. That's from us at FAR really working with our providers, and our providers feeling much more comfortable working and working together, which I think is really, really important. And seeing that around the state. I've been all over the state this past few months, and it's you could feel it, and this is good. So this connects everybody, though. So that's from DCF on down to your level 1 provider, top to bottom, and all the pieces working together. It's happening. So
Okay.
Appreciate everybody's work.
Thank you, Mike. And lastly, it's too early, but the next regular meeting in July, I'd like to get the sense as to the reaction, the education, how well that's working, to the MAT requirement that commences on January 1st,
Yes.
2025. So
Absolutely.
time, but I know there's significant pushback, and education is the key. We're living in a world where MAT exists, and it is a harm reduction, and it's not a monster. Let's put it that way. There are safe ways to do it that are not expensive. You know, I just want to give you a heads up that maybe at the next meeting you can give us a heads up on that, how that's going, the communication.
Absolutely. And we've also we've gotten out ahead of this. As soon as that legislation was drafted and passed, even before signature, reaching out, our statewide all call, which is a new function too, doing education sessions there, and literally we'll go hand in hand and work on the hearts and minds component of that. And especially with new providers coming on, but even working with some of our more traditional, shall we say, providers, having them really understand this, and even hearing from some of our longtime providers that have had that change of thought, and that it isn't a big scary monster. And it really is a great opportunity. I mean, you think about it, MAT is one of those tools that we have that is the bridge for literally not only recovery, but life and death for a lot of these individuals. And as the chemical arms race ramps up with the strength of our synthetics and the things that you hear on these reports, we have to have all the tools working together. So we'll absolutely have some updates on that, and we have some great strategies coming up to spread the word. And congratulations on that piece too. Walking those halls of Tallahassee to get that legislation passed is a big, heavy lift, and it's really important to this. So thank you.
I'll give a shout out also to Jeff Lynn, who couldn't be with us today, Tori Perfetti and Zach Hubbard.
Absolutely.
In Tallahassee, for their work on getting this passed as well. Okay, moving along. Any questions for Micah from our task force? Okay, seeing none. Oxford House, Michael and Makia.
Yes, good day. Pull this up here. Okay. So here we have our most recent report. Statewide, we're at 184 houses. I believe that's an increase of about 8 homes throughout the state. We're at 1,656 beds, 114 men's houses, just over 1,000 men's beds, 26 women's houses with 223 beds, 40 women and children's houses with 374 beds, and then 4 men and children's houses with 39 beds. Our list of cities that we're in continues to grow. We're definitely focusing on some more rural areas of the state and some underserved metro areas, like Miami being one of those. And then Central Florida, Orange County, Seminole County, Osceola County, Lake County, the Space Coast. We do have quite a few homes in that Pasco, Pinellas, Hillsborough County area. We're going to continue to grow there as the need is tremendous. But yeah, the growth is growing great. The staff is doing a tremendous job with teaching individuals in the houses the Oxford House model. We're doing a lot of different things as far as consistent trainings on house level, chapter level, regional level, and statewide. We really have a lot of participation and a lot of people that are wanting to be part of the participation in learning the Oxford House model and learning how we operate and being able to be of service to others. Since our last meeting, we had 1 fatal overdose in Sarasota. We are still waiting on the final determination on that. It may or may not be an actual overdose, but we're waiting to see. And then we had 2 nights ago, we had a non-fatal Narcan reversal in Broward County. We have our upcoming World Convention in fall of 2024 in Orlando. If anybody on this call would like to attend and to learn more about Oxford House, feel free to reach out and we can see if we can make that happen. I included this, and I believe Mary sent it out to everybody. This is our kind of 5-year newsletter, just highlighting a lot of the things that we've been doing and growing and what we've really been focused on. A lot of our workshops, kind of different things that our state association has started up with the alumni and the reentry. And then there's some recovery stories in here. If you have a few minutes, please check it out. There's a lot of great information to kind of get a better understanding of how Oxford House creates community. on how we do it so well, whether it's at the local level or the statewide level. Oxford House is a really unique thing, and we do a tremendous job at really building that community and providing that support for individuals to want to really focus on the recovery. So there's some good stuff in here. But yeah, that's all we got today.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions, any comments? Congratulations on the growth. It's amazing. What has it been, 4 years now since the first contract? 5
5.
years? Okay. Between Oxford House and FAR, there are almost, not quite, but almost by my math, 11,000 recovery certified or Oxford recovery beds in the state of Florida. I don't believe there's a state that comes within 40% or 30% of that. So it's amazing what you all have been able to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's move on to our first presentation. Nikki, I see you're up there, and congratulations again for your new gig. You were with NAATP for years and years, and now I'll let you lead it. Let everybody know where you are now.
Thanks, Al. You made it way bigger than it is, though. So I'm working on a project with the Kennedy Forum called the Alignment for Progress. And so that's what we're going to visit a little bit about today. But I'm excited to be partnering with such a great organization, and it's an advocacy-driven endeavor. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So the Alignment for Progress falls under the Kennedy Forum, and the Kennedy Forum, what they're doing is they're working on fostering multi-stakeholders in bringing them together to advocate, to engage government, to advocate, to work towards breaking down silos, which I know is something we say a lot here, but really trying to connect substance use disorder and mental health care facilities to work on parity. So the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act was passed in 2008 and requires health insurance carriers to cover mental health and substance use disorders equally, as we know. And it's not to limit treatment any more than they do for medical or surgical benefits. So what the Kennedy Forum is doing is they were founded to work towards the full implementation of the act and to try to work with different partners, as I said, with the government, the industry, and within the substance use disorder community. And we're working to expand parity in all forms of insurance too, Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE. And so what the Kennedy Forum, one of their main purposes is to provide tools and resources for those who have experienced parity violations, or for people to even be aware of it, because there is a lot of people, I think, if you were to ask, do you understand what parity is, would not be able to understand. But what we do have is we have a ton of people who have gone to try to get services for their mental health or addiction and been unrightfully denied. And so the Kennedy Forum is working to provide tools to help people. And they also have very specific resources for your state. So you're able to go and you can find different policies that can help you, or they can work with you to help connect you and to get you in contact with the right people to help advocate for appropriate reimbursement. And so part of what the Alignment for Progress is, and this is this specific project that I'm working on. Last October, the Kennedy Forum launched this project, and it's a 10-year initiative. And so this entails a large scale. We're talking all across the country with all different organizations and really bringing together mental health and substance use. It's a large scale coordination to work on the strategic vision that they have for a 90, 90, and 90 by 2033. So what these 90, 90, and 90 are is 90% of individuals, when you go to your primary care physician, are screened for mental health or substance use disorder. How wonderful would that be if we had 90% of people who were able to have that component? And 90% of people who go to get treatment, that they received evidence-based and support that they need. And 90% of those treated can manage their symptoms and achieve recovery. And so what the vision of those, how we're going to achieve those is a couple different ways. By adapting a public health approach with a focus on prevention and early intervention, ensuring that a sufficient and comprehensive payment model is driving outcomes, and that we're collecting and utilizing the outcome data in an appropriate way. And then supporting a skilled and inclusive workforce equipped to address the needs of diverse communities. And then last but not least, accelerating innovation to make high quality care affordable and accessible to everybody. And so that's part of what really drew me to do this, is to be able to find a way to help advocate for people to get what they deserve and that equal reimbursement for the care that they're looking for. And so there's been a tremendous amount of data and research that's done. Fortunately, the Kennedy Forum has a litany of federal resources at their fingertips, and it's spearheaded by Patrick Kennedy, following along with some of the vision that President Kennedy had 60 years ago. The commitment project, which is this specific project that I'm working on, we're trying to gather different organizations to make commitments for what they can do to help achieve this 90, 90, and 90. And so I do want to thank Al, and I want to thank Micah for being willing to think about and look at different ways that they can make commitments. Right now there's 100 commitments. The goal is to get 200, which I definitely think is feasible. And so what happens when you make the commitment is that they are published, they are put out there. And what we're really trying to do, again, is to gather all different kinds of stakeholders to show unity in this and to break down those barriers to get these goals achieved. This is the example of what Al and I were discussing for the task force to make a commitment. So this is an example of what one of the commitments would be. The Addiction Recovery Task Force is committed to advocating for legislation that emphasizes the importance of evidence-based services in recovery residences and prioritizes the safety of individuals seeking recovery services. Our goal is to continue reducing the number of opioid-related deaths in Palm Beach County and throughout the state of Florida by significantly enhancing the safety of those seeking recovery services, which I think is very telling, and it's broad. So it's not we're not giving an exact specific number, although there are some examples that are holding themselves to some data numbers. But so the goal is for us to be able to show unity, and then once the time comes to say, look, we have NAMI, we have the National Council of Mental Health Wellbeing, we have different substance use disorder groups that have all come together to stand up and advocate for this. And so I've got a couple more that are in here. And so this shows the wide range from adolescent mental health to recovery schools, to the Telehealth Association for Workforce, and that is my last one. I thought I had a nice thank you slide on there. And so that is the main purpose and the goal. And I firmly believe in what they're working on. And I think that it's making a difference policy-wise as well. And so they've been asked to back a number of different mental health and substance use federal policies. And so I look forward to continuing and bringing some of the work here to Palm Beach.
Thank you,
That's
Nikki.
it.
Any questions or comments? The enforcement of parity laws is something that we've been discussing since parity laws began and were unenforced. It's amazing how the law is on the books and how it's not being enforced and it's not being adhered to. And so my first question is, because the giraffe in the room are the insurance providers. Have you made any inroads, or do you have a strategy to get a major insurance company to make a commitment for these goals? Because I think that's a real that's one of the cogs, one of the spokes, I guess, to get the wheel to turn.
Great question. And so one of the things that they do have is they have created different advisory committee groups. And one of those Al is an insurance committee group that they have the large the decision makers for insurance companies trying to bring them together. So it is in the works. And that's a very appropriate and good question, because without the insurance, we can protest all we want, and it's not going to make a bit of difference unless we have them on board, or unless we have government officials putting the pressure so hard on them that they're forced to make those changes.
Yeah, I don't even know that we have Medicaid and Medicare that are off the acute care model, which
Right.
basically doesn't work in the long term. I mean, you got 10%, sure, you're going to have some successes,
Right.
but 90%, that's going to be a heavy lift, and it's going to really take the reimbursement models to fundamentally change. And good luck.
Yeah, it's a pie in the sky goal, and but we have to have some people working for it, and they've got a loud voice, and so I believe it can happen.
That's a great segue into the next section, because pie in the sky is what we'd like. You got a 90%, 90, 90, 90. If you got 50, 50, 50, you'd be doing so much better than we are now, which is 10, 10, 10. I mean, the fact that somebody can't get a primary care doctor to speak to the behavioral health doctor or share information is astounding. And these are fundamental flaws in our system. So, okay, there are windmills out there. Let's get them. Thank you, Nikki. Without any other questions, let's go into our next section, which this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and I'm kind of going to preamble this because we're in a different position than we were before I handed over to Dan Lauber. We're in a different position than we were in 2 months ago. I'm not going to point fingers because there's nobody to point fingers at. That we have a cumbersome system in government, and when you get 3 different governmental entities working together on a contract, it takes some time. Unfortunately, we got the proviso for the study, recovery residence, or actually a group home study, in June, signed by the governor, and it took until February 12th before the contract was signed with the vendor, Dan Lauber, and so he lost 7 months of the 12 months. So what we've been able to do, and really thank the department for this, they were able to, provided that the last deliverables, I'll be technical here, which are the draft study and the final study, are begun within the time period, because when a proviso happens, you have it for a year. If you don't spend the money, it goes back to the general revenue. Okay, so we one hide tied behind his back and both legs bound. We were not going to be able to get this done by June 30th, June 15th actually, in order to get the last bill in. But there is a process, and the department is working with us so that we can extend it, provided that the deliverables are begun, another 60 days. So we're going to get our final study before August 31st, but at least we will get a final study. Couple of things I want everybody to think about, because again, I'm going to go back to the pie in the sky. Anybody who's been in this, when it used to be called the Sober Homes Task Force, is, me, I always say better to have a half a loaf than to have nothing to eat. We are looking to create legislation that will, and I don't think we can mandate this, but we can do a carrot and stick to where most municipalities and counties would want to adopt a model zoning ordinance which moves the bar so that there are permitted uses. Some of the recovery residences, this is for group homes, but we are dealing with recovery residences. That's what we deal with. But to be able to get them as permitted uses, to be able to get recovery communities as permitted uses, and then to be able to maintain when you have to get a special exception, at least you still maintain the reasonable accommodation. For that to happen and to be effective, there needs to be training, because the local government and the local zoning boards all need to know what the law requires of them, as opposed to the NIMBY thing that's taken off, like is what is happening right now in Martin County. I will tell you this: if we fashioned a statute that, and Terrell, you could back me up on this, that the League of Cities and the Association of Counties is going to die on the Hill to stop, we will not get legislation at all. And again, a 4.5-hour meeting in Martin County with everybody speaking in terms of violating federal law. We don't want them here. We don't want that kind. They're going to cause crime. They're going to walk out of the facility, and they're going to be in my jail. I mean, all that stuff violates the ADA and the FHAA. But the key here is, unless you're in Oxford House and you've got, the cash to do it, most of the time when these local municipalities and counties do something like what Martin County is doing right now, and I'm gonna call them out on this in terms of how they're approaching it. Whether they approve or not approve this change to allow a facility in, you got to do it the right way. You have to do it with evidence and not with hyperbole and with NIMBYism and pitchforks and torches. 4.5 hours of people doing 3 minutes of saying, I'm fearful in my house. I can't go out of my house for fear of being attacked by this hobgoblin recovery person. So what I'm trying to say is we need to think, we as a group need to think and come up with our ideas as to how, A, we get the statutory language we need, B, we do it in a way that can get it passed, and then we can work on things if it's not perfect, and C, to bake in education so that this issue becomes one that we're all working together on. So we're going to have another meeting. I don't know if we're going to have it in June or we'll have the regular meeting in July, when we're actually going to start putting words to paper. We'll probably have some ideas coming in before that. I suggest we look at chapter 419 as the place to write this proposed legislation that kind of adopts this template for statewide zoning ordinance. If you look at 419 right now, the spacing distance is 1,200 feet, okay? Which is clearly violates, I believe, violates the ADA. But anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder, Dan, but I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's get this rocking and rolling.
Hey, thanks very much. It's literally been exactly 50 years since I first got dragged into all this. I don't know if this is, it's not going to show. When I was working for the American Society of Planning Officials and its planning advisory service, and they wanted someone who had an interest in housing to do this report on zoning for family and group care facilities. And a lawyer, Frank Bangs, and I produced this report. This was back in the days when all these homes, whether it was a sober home or a group home for people with developmental disabilities, were generally being required to get a special use or conditional use permit to locate in residential districts, period. Very, very restrictive. This was 15 years before the Fair Housing Act was amended in 1988. to require reasonable accommodation for these uses. My work on this has been evolving ever since. What was in this PAS report, Plan Advisory Service report 50 years ago, was sort of zoning for community residences, beta version 0.5. Now I'd say we're on zoning for community residences version 15. We've made advances. It's been evolving because of, in large part, because of the input from many of the people here and other people like you who've been very kind to share their expertise and their insights about the operations of community residences, their needs. And when I say community residents, I'm including the sober homes, what they need to operate and be successful. I do want to thank everyone here for the work that you've been doing. I want to thank the folks at FAR for providing the much of the information that I've requested and for providing their insights that have resulted in some changes in what I've been proposing to cities and will be proposing in this study. The study will incorporate what's been passed recently by the state legislature and signed by the governor, and it will also address implementation in a good deal of detail. One of the problems we have found with some of these cities that have adopted ordinances that I've been writing in Florida is that due to a lack of training, not that it hasn't been offered, but it hasn't often been accepted, some of the zoning boards are not properly following the zoning code. And they're treating the spacing distance, for example, as hard and fast and not putting on their Mr. Spock ears and reasoning, well, why is there an exception in the zoning ordinance providing to locate within a spacing distance? Obviously, it's not because it's hard and fast. It isn't. I've put together, anyway, and I also want to really thank the folks at FSU and particularly Al Johnson for their effort they've put in on this, especially dealing with the governmental steps to get this established and extended so we can actually get the study done and produce a high quality study. I'm going to describe for those of you who haven't seen this and may have only heard about it, the basic model of the zoning and the process. And this, normally I go through a whole explanation about the Fair Housing Act and what it requires, et cetera, but I'm just going to give you an illustration of what I'm talking about. Oh no, I'm trying to share my screen and it's going crazy. Oh God.
Dan, you could send it to Marianne Senator. I just email your PowerPoint to her. It'd take her a couple of minutes, but she can get it up on the screen for you if you'd like.
Okay, I will do that right now. I don't know why my screen sometimes goes crazy here.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to pivot back to basically our scheduling here. We may or may not be able to get a cogent statute before the legislature. The next section, the good news is the next session is in March, not January, because it's not an election year. So we'll probably have a little bit more time to get it to them. But we definitely, this is a complete rewrite. And I do want to get ideas and input from as many people on the task force as I can. And I think Commissioner Weiss, you had a question on chat while we're getting this PowerPoint up. Did you want to just ask that question and maybe we can discuss that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank you, Al. Yeah, the question is, are we entitled to file a lawsuit, or could you in the rewrite allow us to file lawsuits against jurisdictions that don't provide facilities for their residents? Because ultimately it forces other jurisdictions to have to absorb what's happening in their area.
Wow, that is an interesting question. I don't know if you have standing, because it's a collateral effect. What Commissioner Weiss is saying is Palm Beach County has such an ordinance. You know, and if Martin County does not, and Broward County does not, and Indian River and et cetera, then it's the place where recovery residences are going to spring up are going to be in the places where certification will allow if there's proper spacing. I think we're talking 660 feet, that they're a matter of right. And so any demands on the infrastructure in Palm Beach County could cause a harm. You know, I don't know, because this is all legitimate business. And my inclination, and Susan, maybe you want to chime in, or Terrell, both being lawyers. I don't know that there's a cause of action here on part of one municipality or county against another.
I cannot speak directly to that. I would think there are going to be some serious legal issues with that, but the question is whether FAR should do it on behalf of those individuals who are being deprived of recovery residence. We can't speak to treatment centers, but that is something certainly FAR will entertain as a concept, because one of the issues here is that there are more and more municipalities that are suffering NIMBYism, to coin a phrase from Al. That's a new term, NIMBYism. But and that really is a question that we are contemplating as something to do, because it's not just Martin County. There's some other counties in which we have FAR certified residents that are getting some pushback, but the municipalities are sort of ganging up on them. So that may be one way to address it, but county to county, I would defer to Terrell, probably knows that answer. I don't.
Thank you, Susan. So, I mean, generally, I think that would be a really hard, that would be a difficult cause of action to try to allege against another county. You know, from the standpoint of the Fair Housing Act, obviously individuals that are unable to live in the dwelling of their choosing might have standing to bring a cause of action, but I don't know that one county could then file suit against another. I mean, I think that in part is kind of what some of this opiate epidemic litigation funding has been, to provide for recourse for those jurisdictions that have been, at least in part, you know, also to the families, but to those jurisdictions that have had to bear the brunt of having to provide for services, and really, you know, without funding, proper funding to do so, they've been able to recover some funds through the opiate epidemic, but even that's been kind of hard to prove. So I don't know that that would be the best tack to take at this point. I think that what you said at the beginning, Al, and I'm sure Dan would probably agree with this as well as Susan, education is really the key. I think in a lot of ways, unfortunately, in working for a city and having spoken to different organizations that pertain to cities and counties, you know, all the way up from local to national level, I do think in some ways, unfortunately, the law is not intuitive to them. In other ways, you know, sometimes it's a matter of having elected officials that just, you know, they don't want those in their backyard. They argue, you know, NIMBY. But I think more than anything, it's a combination of just a lack of education, and then also even in the cities that have adopted some reasonable regulations, sometimes it's a matter of turnover and the new person that comes on board not being educated as to the applicability of the code. So I do think that we have our work cut out for us from an education standpoint, and hopefully by virtue of the statewide study and creating some kind of statewide legislation, we can attack this at least on a statewide level to provide that education to the cities and the counties and make them aware of really what they're required to follow as it relates to the Fair Housing Act and Americans with Disabilities Act. So that way they don't make these silly statements on the record. And there is the opportunity for housing to be provided for everybody that needs it.
Thank you, Terrell. And to kind of expand on what you just said, there is a carrot here, and there is a reason why municipalities, even imperfectly, municipalities are adopting this similar model code. Is number one, you don't have the issue of uncertified homes, because the quid pro quo for the permitted use is going to be your certified recovery residence, which has standards, including good neighbor policies, but standards for the protection of the residents inside. Just the relapse rate, the overdose rate, it speaks to how successful the program is, and it is equally true with the Oxford houses. So on the one hand, if it's going to happen, in other words, the ADA and the FHAA require a reasonable accommodation. So in part, if you adopt a model ordinance, and then you have some semblance of consistency across the state. Number one, you're going to have quality residences, and number two, in return, you're going to be asked to do what you'd be asked to do anyway at a much lesser cost, because if you have a permitted use, you don't have to go through the hearings when you have an application. And then, of course, there is always the exceptions, which, again, there has to be a reasonable accommodation if it's reasonable. Okay, with that, and before we get with Dan, Micah, I think your FAR is so much of a partner in this, because you will be going in front of legislative boards, commissions, and councils to explain what exactly FAR is and how the community is protected. And it's the right thing to do. But you should not have these uncertified flop houses that spring up and you have to deal with in reasonable accommodation, when certification will give the right to be able to locate. So anyway, Dan, I think we got your PowerPoint happening.
Okay. I think that Commissioner Weiss's point, though, makes a very strong argument for having statewide legislation that establishes the maximum restrictions on community residences, but allows any city or county to adopt less restrictive provisions, more or less like it does now. The problem is that the state legislation, as will be explained in the study, has lots of illegal provisions in it. One of the most glaring is its declaration that allowing a community residence within 500 feet of a single-family neighborhood, I think a community residence of more than 6 people alters the character of the neighborhood and isn't allowed. And its failure to allow for any provision to locate within a spacing distance, among numerous provisions in the state statute there of questionable legality, shall we say. And I want to make it real clear, Florida is so far ahead of so many other states. The problems with the unlicensed scam operators, uncertified scam operators, is very intense in Arizona, where they have a serious crisis going on. And they've got big problems in California too, where there's no state licensing or certification available, and incredible concentrations are developing, and there's failure to protect the people in the homes from the scam operators. Okay, I want to make the reason I'm starting here with the definition of family is because all the nearly every single court decision that has thrown out a requirement of licensing or certification, or has thrown out a spacing distance, has done it when the community residence fits within the definition of family of the local jurisdiction. In other words, in this illustrative case, you have a definition of family that allows up to 4 unrelated people to live together as a single housekeeping unit. And this was sanctioned by the Supreme Court back in about 1974 in the Belterre decision, written by William O. Douglas, hardly a conservative justice. So if a community residence of any kind, including a very small sober home, fits within the city's definition of families cap on unrelated, it's a family like any other. And you can't apply locally a spacing distance. You can't apply a requirement of a license. It's in. And you can't count these towards measuring spacing distances from other community residences because it is a family. However, when a community residence seeks to locate with more than 4 unrelated individuals that constitute a family, that's when the zoning code has to make this reasonable accommodation that the Fair Housing Amendments Act of '88 added to the Fair Housing Act. And it has to use, based on taking together all the court decisions, it's got to use the least drastic means that actually achieve a legitimate government interest. None of these legal fictions that your purpose is what you're actually going to achieve. It really has to be achieved. Move along the next slide. So what I've been done, and this is way different from 50 years ago, where we were basing these two categories on the number of, we were dividing community residences by the number of residents. It's based on how they function and what they resemble. We've been dividing them into family community residences, which is relatively permanent tenancy, no time limit on how long you can live there. And based on my discussions with people in the industry and such, I have been using a year as the minimum length of residency expected. But I've been reducing it now to 6 months because I think that still will provide a stable enough atmosphere to belong in a single family neighborhood where it will fit in with a single family neighborhood. The transitional community residence has a shorter tenancy, limited to weeks or months. Typically now I've brought it down to fewer than 6 months. So those would include the sober homes, for example, that people can come right out of a rehab. I did deal with one in Wilton Manors that was, you live there 21 days, at the most 28 days. And others that are more of a short-term residency. The next slide, please. With the family community residences, we've been treating these as a permitted use in districts where, if they meet these 2 criteria, well, actually there's 3 criteria, but we're using a spacing distance based on what we feel comfortable with, that they will not interfere with normalization or community integration or the use of non-disabled neighbors as role models, as long as they're at least a block apart, typically 660 feet, or 9 lots, whichever is greater. And the reason for that is you've got some communities where you've got very large lot widths of 150 or 200 feet, and that would mean you could have another community residence within 3 lots or 4 lots. This is, a threshold. This is not set in concrete. And we want them to be licensed, certified, or have an Oxford House charter, which I've been treating as the equivalent of certification or licensing. And that's the legitimate government interest of protecting the residents in the homes. The spacing distance serves a legitimate government interest of ensuring that the homes will be able to achieve their core purposes of normalization, community integration, and use of neighbors as role models. If either of those isn't met, then, unlike this current state legislation, you can apply for a further reasonable accommodation. You could call it be a special use permit. In Palm Beach County, it's a level 2 type 2 waiver. It could be a conditional use, whatever you want to call it. It could be, you could call it a further reasonable accommodation if you wish. And those get evaluated on narrowly drafted standards that are based on the reason for requiring the special use. You do not apply the other regular special use standards to it that are absolutely unrelated to this. Also, if a home would house more than 12 people, and we're allowing I should explain these, cities have been setting 10 as the maximum number in community residences as permitted uses. I've recently been convincing cities to increase that up to 12. And that's in part because we can feel very confident that they can emulate a family. And this goes back to the whole reason, of course, even before the Fair Housing Act was amended, we're saying these group homes needed to be allowed in single family districts, the family community residences at least, because they emulated a family. And so if it houses more than 12 residents and isn't a state licensed community residential home, which allows up to 14, then you'd apply for a special use permit. The standard for that, give you a quick idea. The standards in the ordinances that I've been writing for that are in part based on what the courts have said, and that is you have to allow more people in the home if you can show that it needs more than 12 people or 10, whatever your standard is, to ensure therapeutic or financial viability. And the other standard is the operator still has to show that it will be able to function like a family, emulate a family. And we've all seen, well, many of us have seen Cheaper by the Dozen, which obviously was a documentary, or Yours, Mine, and Ours, where they have families of 9, 10, 12 people. It was meant to be a joke, folks. There's not a lot of fair housing humor out there, let me tell you. The next slide. Transitional community residences would be permitted uses in the districts where multifamily housing is allowed with the same standards and the same process, and would be a permitted use, would be a special use in single family districts where we have standards that require that it shows that it will fit into a single family neighborhood, despite the much higher turnover rate that you get. And this, where it's reasonable to ensure that the character of a neighborhood is preserved, and the courts have allowed it. Now, I want to make it really, really clear that the experience here and other cities I've worked with, when they've adopted ordinances like this, the overwhelming majority of proposed community residences, including sober homes, have been allowed as permitted uses. Simply, they are not within a spacing distance. As long as they got the certification or licensing, they're in. And they stay within they're within the cap. So the overwhelming majority have been allowed as permitted uses. And I know there are some folks who say, I'd like to just have to do a reasonable accommodation and go in with each one on a case-by-case basis. I don't understand that. The reasoning behind it escapes me. But I can tell you that in the cities I've been able to follow up with in Florida that have adopted this, and Arizona, you can count the number of requests to locate within a spacing distance on one hand. In Mesa, Arizona, they've had the ordinance for 4 years now, and this year they had their first request to locate within a spacing distance, and it got approved. But we also did some training of the zoning board and the staff so they would understand how to implement this. And that's why, as Al points out, training is just so important. Next slide. Okay, so this shows the whole picture of the two types of community residences that we've divided these into. And I realize there are people who would like to have just community residence, but we've got to recognize that they are different in nature based on how long people stay and the turnover rates. Single family districts are different. The multifamily districts, turnover in single family districts is much lower than in multifamily districts. And we are trying to preserve the character of the neighborhood and taking into account, as Al talked about, 3/4 of a loaf is better than no loaf, quite frankly. The other type of community residence, well, type of use that sober homes could be in, if you can move the slide along, is what I've been calling the recovery community. And this is where you could have multifamily building, series of single-family homes, series of townhouses, a couple of duplexes, triplexes that are limited to people in recovery. And these pretty clearly are not going to be very compatible with single-family districts. But any existing one would be allowed to continue as a lawful non-conforming use as long as it gets state certification from FAR within a certain number of time after zoning amendments are adopted. We have figured out, though, and this is the evolution, is, okay, there's two distinctions. One, there is no option to establish a recovery community without a license because certification is available. And we've realized that recovery communities come in a whole lot of different sizes. And one spacing distance doesn't fit all. So we've been using a larger spacing distance than for community residences because recovery communities, and we've seen them with 96 people, 150 people, 70 people, they're going to exude a influence over a wider area than a community residence of just 12 people or 10 people or 8 people. So we've been using greater spacing distances, but next slide, please. As we've learned, they come in all sorts of different sizes. So with the last 2 cities I've worked with, we've been recommending a tiered spacing distance for proposed recovery communities. Where those of up to 16, it's the same spacing distance as a community residence. We think that the influence, this area of influence would be pretty much the same as any community residence. And then it gradually goes up. These figures are illustrative. I emphasize they are illustrative. They are not set in concrete. If you want to locate within the spacing distance, then you go the special use permit route. With Pompano Beach, we've put together a very extensive memo that the city has made public on how to evaluate requests to locate within the spacing distance. It takes away a lot of the arbitrariness that some zoning boards have applied erroneously. And that information will be incorporated into the state study so that it will help establish a legislative history of how these are to be interpreted properly. Earlier, I mentioned there, kind of glossed over, there's an opportunity for a special use permit if no license is available for a community residence. And there are those community residences, for example, those for people with eating disorders, for which there is no state license available. And the standards to receive the special permit for those are basically showing that you will function the same way that licensing typically requires you to function, as well as functioning as a family. Next slide, final slide. I want to make it also real clear, the bottom line on the number of residents in any community residence and indeed in any residential dwelling unit is usually the local property maintenance code, or whatever, which community has adopted. It has a formula to prevent overcrowding that applies to all residences. And the Supreme Court in the Edmunds decision on group home zoning, for which I was very proud that the American Planning Association was the only government-oriented organization to submit an amicus brief on the side of Oxford House on the side of the Fair Housing Act. All the other government organizations were trying to get the Fair Housing Act provisions thrown out as unconstitutional. And I did have the pleasure of co-authoring the American Planning Association brief on this, which seemed to influence Justice Ginsburg's decision. But these, you don't have to make a reasonable accommodation from this requirement. It's in that decision. It applies to all residences. The usual formula is one occupant of the sleeping area needs 70 square feet. Each additional occupant requires 50 additional square feet. And that's the bottom line. So even if you have a zoning code or state licensing that allows 12 people, or in state licensing 14 people, if under the local jurisdictions, property maintenance code or building code or whichever code they have this in, it would only allow 7 people, then that's all that can go in there. And the city does not have to make a reasonable accommodation from that. And that's a code, again, I stress, applies to all residences. Similarly, if you have a city's code, because I know fire sprinklers have come up a lot, that requires all residences to have fire sprinklers, then of course a sober home would have to have fire sprinklers. And we've dealt with this in a number of cities in Arizona. But if you don't have that kind of a requirement, it is, and I believe Florida law has changed on this, fortunately, a city can't require a fire sprinkler system for a sober home or really any other community residence where the people are perfectly capable of self-evacuation in an emergency. Obviously, where they aren't, a fire sprinkler could be required. Direct fire alarm could be required. But for those where people are fully capable of self-evacuation, it just can't require it. It flies in the face of the majority opinion on this in the courts, with the sole exception being Massachusetts, where their state law bizarrely treats sober homes as boarding houses, and they require fire sprinklers in boarding houses. I can't explain it except local Massachusetts politics, or maybe they're all speaking with such a strange accent no one can understand what the other person's saying. I don't know. Another bad attempt at fair housing. So that's, the overlay, the broad outline without many details, without much explanation, without going into all the nuances of the sort of zoning approach that's being taken. As those of you who may be familiar, like Terrell, with the first ordinance I worked on in Delray Beach, where I had the pleasure of working with Terrell, it's evolved quite a bit, and it's going to continue to evolve. It's not written, nothing is ever written in stone. As we learn more, it's just an adage from the planning field. The better informed decision makers are, presumably the better decisions they'll make. And that's sort of been a guiding principle as we've been marching along this path to provide the least restrictive zoning that's needed, that still provides protections for the people in the homes, enables the homes to achieve their essential goals, and preserves the character of neighborhoods, so that they will be suitable for the community residences to be located in them, and they aren't turned into quasi de facto social service districts. So again, I appreciate all the help that a number of the people here and their organizations have been providing on this. I expect to be speaking with you further as we fine tune the draft and final study and work on zoning. And, the study will present to the legislature. They have a choice. You could either make this statewide as the maximum zoning that can be applied to community residences and recovery communities, allowing localities to adopt less demanding zoning. Or you could, do this as a model, but realize, as Commissioner Weiss pointed out, that's not going to solve the problem in those jurisdictions that are still trying very hard to keep these out altogether. And there are jurisdictions in Florida, as well as all over the country, because I monitor this. Google Alerts is a wonderful tool where the behaviors of these cities is just unbelievable. There's actually one in Pennsylvania but they have a sober home for 3 people, and how you can do a sober home for 3 people, I don't know. They want to expand to 8, and they're having to go through a special use permit for that, and dealing with massive opposition, similar to what Al described is going on in Stewart, Florida. Anyway, thanks very much for staying awake. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have and see if I can confuse and confound you further.
Yeah, actually, Terrell, you've got your hand up, but I have a question for you before I give you the floor. And that is, when we talk about, and this is a great idea, setting up a maximum, which actually is legislation, and the municipalities can do more relaxed as they see fit. Do you think there's any chance that this would be supported by the League of Cities or the Association of Counties?
I think it would be tough because there really has been such a grab back of, or clawback of home rule by the state legislature in recent years that I think that most municipalities and at least charter counties will be very scrutinizing of any type of legislation that, even if it seems like it will help them, that doesn't give them a level of control. So I do think that would be a tough sell. I'm not saying it's impossible. I understand the need for it. And, I think it probably, in the long run, is probably the best option. That being said, I will simply say, by way of analogy, a couple of years ago, we had kind of pushed for, and I know this may not be so popular with some of you on here, but the possibility of mandatory state licensure, not just this voluntary certification, which over time has morphed. And there was pushback, not necessarily from the municipalities, but from a lot of different levels, including municipalities, on that, because there just is this fear of the lack of control of it. I don't know. I think that we've made a lot of headway over the years with the certification piece of it. I do think that we have given presentations in front of the Florida League of Cities and Association of Counties multiple times to where they are understanding the issues. And obviously, with all of the legislation that's gone forward, if there's any impact on cities or counties, we share that with them and try to get in front of it and explain to them why it's helpful. As it relates to, for example, fire sprinklers, we had to talk with several different entities, as you recall, Al, in order to explain that. And we were able to make headway. I don't know that we'll be successful with getting that approved the first go around, though. I think if we do it and approach it more from the standpoint of model legislation and allow them to avail themselves of it, and as they see jurisdictions that do that and how it's helpful for them, they'll be more likely to be on board with it, is what I would speculate is more likely to occur. Kind of like when Delray initially passed an ordinance and was the first in the state to pass an ordinance creating some kind of regulations. And as other cities over time saw that Delray had some success with it and was able to essentially get a better handle on some of the unscrupulous operators in town, other cities decided and counties decided to move forward with legislation. And I think generally have had some success, although again, I do think there needs to be that continued training piece for them. So I don't know if that answers your question. I guess I'm just saying, I think it would be a tough sell.
Yeah, okay. Now you wanted to make a comment, so go ahead.
I just had one question, and I know you kind of touched on this in the beginning. Is the study is it expected to be finalized in June?
No, it's
Okay.
won't be finalized till sometime in July, probably. One thing I didn't make real clear, this sort of zoning approach requires certification or licensing or an Oxford House charter. It is not something that's waived. You gotta get the licensing or the certification. Otherwise, the home, whether it's sober home, recovery community, or a group home for people with developmental disabilities, you gotta have the licensing or it's not allowed in any jurisdiction that adopts this kind of zoning. And that helps it really helps get rid of the crooked operators, which, as we're seeing in Arizona, they're in particular, as well as elsewhere, they're all over the place. They may have migrated from Florida to some extent, but they found new homes.
And thank you for that point, Dan, because I think that is important, that yes, absolutely, whichever way we go with it, if it's something that's mandated as state legislation, that's almost preemptive, or it's something that's more of model legislation, either way, if you avail yourself of it, you are going to have to require the certification, which again protects the residents of the homes, which is the whole point of it. So that was the only question I had, was just when the study would be available. I will just say that I did speak, and sorry, my AirPods went out, so I don't know if I cut out there for a minute or not, or if I just couldn't hear myself. But I did see one of the city's lobbyists recently, who I believe may also be a lobbyist for some other cities and counties nearby, Eric's Consultants, and discussed that we may be putting forward some legislation. And the hope is that perhaps we could again utilize Gail Harrell and Caruso to assist us with sponsoring the legislation. I think that would be helpful. So that's just one thought. And then I did have a thought, Dan, just as you were going over towards the very end, where you were talking about
Terrell, can you turn your volume up a little bit?
Number of residents and how you follow the local property maintenance code. I do think that as we draft state legislation, and it may not necessarily be something that ultimately goes into the legislation, it may be more of the education piece, but I do think it's important to point out that there are many communities throughout the state of Florida that have homeowners associations or condo associations, and they may have their own separate maintenance code, which is different and maybe to some extent controlling over those particular communities, and that anybody looking to locate there just may need to be aware of that.
Dan, did you hear that?
Yeah, this
Okay.
has actually been a controversial thing for a long
That's
time,
it.
but local government, the big controversy has been
Sorry.
homeowner associations or landlords that impose limitations on how many people can live in a dwelling unit that are more limited than what the government standards are, and those are almost universally thrown out as discriminatory.
Understood. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just talking about as it relates to possibly the number of occupants and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's they can't do that. I think it's a clear violation of the Fair Housing Act, and I think that's the way the courts have been ruling too.
So the fact that it's still showing up is struggle.
So I guess as a municipal attorney, we usually just tell them we can't give them advice on that. I mean, generally speaking, you know, I know that there are associations that sometimes have limitations on number of rentals and other things that come into play. Again, this is going way down into the rabbit hole. We can certainly have this discussion separately in the future. Okay,
well, I mean, when we fine tune this, I mean, some of these questions are going to come up again, I think. My question is, can we establish, or maybe my recommendation, let's establish statutory criteria as to the standards for deciding the issue of reasonable accommodation for special exceptions. What I have been hearing from people not only on the task force, but outside the task force, is that it's all well and good to have the permitted uses, but if a municipality or a county is taking the position that, hey, that's our reasonable accommodation, this ordinance that we've adopted, where we're allowing, you know, these the 660 feet, you have a right to you have the right to place your recovery residence there or your group home. And then you go in for 559 feet, and all of a sudden they're telling you to pound sand and they're making it difficult for you. So education is all well and good, but I think we have to embed in if it's a model ordinance or statute, we have to establish criteria for the 3 or 4 times based on your experience, Dan, that somebody's coming in for an exemption. How do you deal with that? And then that will be in law, and it will be, or at least the best practice will be there for the municipal attorneys and the county attorneys to be able to say, okay, this is how we handle this.
Yeah, the studies that I've been doing, and this study will also make it extremely clear that this whole package constitutes reasonable accommodation. In other words, you've got the first level of reasonable accommodation is the ordinance allowing these if they meet spacing, licensing, and size. But the next levels of reasonable accommodation come to locate within the spacing, to establish a home if there's no licensing available, or if you want to have more than 12 people.
Okay.
Or in the case of transitional community residences, want to locate in a single family district. There's multiple levels of reasonable accommodation. The Fair Housing Act does not, it's very vague about what is a reasonable accommodation. And the joint HUD Department of Justice memo makes it pretty clear that the zoning and ordinance could be provisions you make can be a reasonable accommodation, and those provisions include these exceptions to the as of right zoning. And as I said, the memo from, it'd probably be good to distribute to this group the memo from Pompano Beach that they gave to Jeffrey, who's got a hearing there tomorrow, that I wrote for the city on different how to apply particularly the spacing distance standards. It makes it really, really clear, all these different scenarios, how to do it and do it correctly. And I should tell you, with the cities that I'm doing work with now, I'm putting in the proposals, the contract requirement for training, and asking them to record the training sessions so they can use them with future staff members and future zoning board members. The catch to this, Al, and everyone, this stuff it's nuanced. I know we live in a day and age where nobody wants to pay attention to nuance or detail, and everyone wants to just operate by ideology. But the approach has to be very principled, which I think this is, and it does have nuance to it, which is just unavoidable if we're going to have a fair zoning approach that complies with the Fair Housing Act and provides the protections to people to achieve these legitimate government interests using the least drastic means needed.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Actually, kind of a tangent, but Terrell, do you think it's possible, and Micah, do you think it's practical or practicable to get FAR in front of the League of Cities when they do their conference, to kind of basically explain to them what FAR is, what protections there are, how it's different from some of the nightmare scenarios, because there is control, oversight, and there are policies and procedures. I think that might be beneficial to just notwithstanding what we're doing with this ordinance or legislation, but just in general terms, because there is a push around the state. I just looked at Miami-Dade, Micah, on the number of recovery beds. Miami-Dade's got what, 4 million people? There's like, you got like 100 beds in all of Miami-Dade.
It is a one of our key areas where there is a number of uncertified houses. So that is one of the hot spots. But to the idea of speaking in front of League of Cities, agreed. I think it's a great idea. Actually, I've had several conversations locally with Richard, and who again has been a supporter of this work for quite a while now. So I think it'd be very effective. And I think coming at it with the data points that we have, both from FAR and certainly Oxford House as well, I think it'd be very valuable. I would be willing to do that
Yeah,
anytime,
maybe,
anywhere.
maybe Michael, you would want to be part of that, so it would be a joint Oxford House, a FAR presentation. Or just, give us some thought and we can go offline and figure out if you can get the powers that be of the two organizations to dedicate an hour of the conference, like the annual conference.
And if I could really quickly, their annual conference, if you're talking about the Florida League of Cities, is in August. I think the second week of August. I believe it's going to be in Hollywood this year, Hollywood, Florida. So I'm not sure if, I presume that they've already started, creating kind of their agenda, but we probably would need to reach out to the Florida League of Cities, sooner rather than later in order to get everyone together and get them in front of them. I'm not sure as far as the Association of Counties and when they might have a conference like that, but that might be helpful as well.
Commissioner Weiss, do you think you might talk to your county attorney and see if we can plant the idea for the Association of Counties?
So our meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks in Orlando. Where it's in a couple of weeks in June. Let me just see if I can find it real quick for you. But I think it's probably too late for us for this year.
But even for next year, I mean, this is a forever situation, and I think it would be helpful. So okay, back burner for next June the 25th. Okay, did somebody else have their hand up? I don't think so.
I did just want to say, so back burner for the counties, but if we do want to move on the Florida League of Cities, again, we probably need to mobilize quickly. So let me know what I can do to help.
Well, I will be in touch tomorrow. And we'll see if we can at least plant the idea. Micah, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Michael Makia for Oxford House? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we'll keep you guys in the loop. We'll see. They may already have their agenda as well. August is not very far off. So if we can have a presentation, just be Oxford House and FAR, what we are, we're here to stay type of thing. Okay, good. Let's move on. I don't think we'll have a special meeting in June. I think it's more productive for us to wait until we at least have the full draft and perhaps be close to the completion of the final study in July. So we'll have a meeting in July that's going to be dedicated almost primarily to this, and we'll actually start writing some legislation in between June and July once we get the draft study. Okay. Now the last thing we have on the agenda is Nikki. You were going to say a few words on this unpleasant movement of private insurance reimbursing below Medicaid?
So this is interesting, and I realize that it's in New York, but I was talking to Al about it, and he thought that it would be good to bring up. It's come to my attention. First, this is a staggering statistic, and this was published in December of 23. Among mental health providers and substance use disorder providers that are listed in the New York state health plan directories, 86% did not take in-network patients. And so it's exposing a huge access to mental health and substance use services across the state. And so part of what the New York governor has done is this is the, let me roll up real quick. So this is the New York State 2025 State Executive Mental Health and Substance Use is rolled into this too, for their budget that has been approved as far as what I was told when this information was passed on to me. And why I'm sharing this with the group is that this part right here, it requires a minimum commercial insurance reimbursement rates for behavioral health services that are at least equal to what Medicare, what Medicaid rates are. And so with this, the governor has included, it's a critical proposal to finally bring parity to commercial rates for behavioral health care services. It has to be equal to what is paid by Medicaid for the exact same services. And there's two bills that are there, Senate Bill 8466 and Assembly Bill 8839 are paired with this. But according to this, it takes effect January 2025. And my colleague and friend who works with parity across the country and shared this with me said that other states are looking to duplicate this right immediately. And so when I say immediately, I understand there is a lot of tape that has to be cut to get it in, but this is a huge step for New York.
Thank you, Nikki. Does anybody know, anybody at the meeting know whether there's an issue here with insurance reimbursements being below Medicaid? Private insurance in network, I guess. Anybody hear of this being an issue in Florida? I don't see any hands.
Buddy. It's definitely an issue in other states, so I guess it's good that no one here has heard of that.
Well, we have our issues here in Florida, but apparently this may not be one of them. Thank goodness. Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that up. And if any comments, we'll be meeting in July. What is our meeting date in July?
17th.
July 17th. Dan, that's going to be the Dan Lauber show. I think you just signed off. You had to go to another meeting. Everybody give it some thought. I'm going to be crunching some, hopefully coming up with some actual legislation speed for the meeting so we can go over that. Again, I'm anticipating we really are going to need to get any legislation in by October, November, finalized, so we can have it there to be filed in December, January. Any final thoughts for anyone?
Just real quick, I put into
John, hi.
Hi, how are you? I put into the chat room the.
Can you, John, turn up your volume, please?
The best I can do. I put into the chat room the plan that was approved on Monday by the advisory committee. And for those that don't know, the board has a workshop item on opioid settlement recommendations in the plan on Tuesday, May 21st at somewhere around 9:30.
Thank you. If anyone would like a copy of the report, John, you do have it available. You can electronically send it to anybody who requests it, right?
I can, and I just put the link in the chat room.
Oh, good. I'll tell you what, we'll send it out to everybody who's on our mailing list, just so they have it, so people can look at it. And what was the date of the workshop?
Tuesday, May 21st, Board of County Commissioners Chamber.
And that's going to be in the BCC chambers?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other business? Okay, hearing none. Thank you all very much. I told you it was going to be a quick meeting today. We're out over an hour early. No, not that the meetings are not too long normally, but we are out early today. So have a great rest of the week and weekend. We'll see you in July.
Thanks, Al. Well done,
Thanks,
everybody.
Al. Good to see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Al.
We'll rock later, Al. Thanks.
Yeah, literally.